All right, we're live.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. This is the Howard County delegation hearing on statewide bills. As you may recall, we had a prior hearing for delegation bills that took place in November. So this is an opportunity that by tradition, this delegation has had for residents in Howard County to be able to come forward to testify on any statewide bills. Typically, this is held in the George Howard building. Obviously, with this year's format, it's not. And so we're going to do this in a virtual format this year. We can begin very briefly with just welcome and introductions. So thank you to all the attendees. I know some are we're in the waiting room. I think they're being let in now. And we can go around the Zoom, I guess, to very briefly just introduce each of ourselves as members of the delegation. So I'm Clarence Lamb, Senator in District 12, the chair of the Senate delegation, but serve on the Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. And we also have our co-chair, Delegate Feldmark.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Feldmark, delegate from District 12. Proud to chair the House delegation. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee, where I serve on the Election Law and Revenues subcommittees.
I guess we can maybe take the senators first, and I'll try to go in alphabetical order. Senator Hester.
Good evening, everyone. Senator Hester. Yes, we all know how to spell, right? I'm just going to continue. I'm Senator Hester. I represent District 9, which includes Western Howard County and also parts of Carroll County. I serve on the Education, Health, and Environment Committee with Senator Lamb, and I co-chair the Joint Committee on Cyber, IT, and Biotech, which Delegate Feldmark also participates in. Great to see you all.
Great, thank you. Senator Gazzoni.
Hi, everybody. I'm Senator Guy Gazzoni. That's G before H Gazzoni. And I represent District 13, and I am the chair of the Budget and Tax Committee for the Senate.
Delegate Feldmark, do you want to introduce the House members? You may have a little more luck than me.
I'm going to start off alphabetically with wonderful Delegate Vanessa Atterbury.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. I'm Delegate Vanessa Atterbury. I represent District 13, and I serve as Vice Chair of the Judiciary Committee in the House.
Thank you. And Delegate Ebersole.
Delegate Ebersole, also representing the Venerable District 12. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee. In there, I serve on the Education Subcommittee and chair the Early Childhood Subcommittee. Got a couple of other assignments, but they're not that interesting. I think I've said enough.
Thank you. Delegate Hill.
Yes, I'm Delegate Terry Hill. I'm the fourth leg of the District 12 Venerable four-leg stool. Not as interesting as Delegate Ebersole, but still I serve an important role on the Health and Government Operations Committee.
Thank you. And Delegate Kittleman.
Hi, I'm Trent Kittleman, representing 9A, Western Howard County and the Sykesville area of Carroll, and I serve on appropriations.
Thank you. Delegate Novotny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Reed Novotny, also in 9A and on appropriations also, and I am the newest member of this delegation.
Okay, I know Delegate Pendergrass is going to be joining us a little bit later. So Delegate Terrassa.
Yeah, I'm Delegate Jen Terrassa. Thanks, Madam Chair, I shouldn't have said. Delegate Jen Terrassa from District 13. I serve on Environment and Transportation. I'm on the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee, Land Use and Ethics Subcommittee, and Local Government and Bi-County Agencies Subcommittee.
Thank you. And Delegate Watson.
Hi, I'm Delegate Courtney Watson. I serve on the Economic Matters Committee, on the Property and Casualty Insurance Subcommittee, and the Banking, Financial Institutions, and Consumer Protection Subcommittee, and I'm Vice Chair of the Democratic Caucus.
All right, Senator Lamb.
Great. So just a few quick rules of the road before we get started with testimony. So any individual may testify for up to 3 minutes as long as they're signed up. And I think we have about 24 people signed up. An alarm will ring to let the speaker know when their 3 minutes have expired. We do ask you to please keep to the allotted time so we can be respectful of everyone's time. And because this is a Zoom meeting, we ask that you, once you've given your, please leave the Zoom meeting. You can still follow the rest of the meeting on YouTube as well. We do ask that you, again, please keep to your time, but also if you're coming with a group, to try not to duplicate previous members' testimony. I will try to announce, the chairs will try to announce the next 3 names that are coming up to testify so that you can be prepared as to who's coming next. As a reminder, this is a statewide bill hearing. And so what we will do first is actually take the any legislative bond initiatives that did not get heard back in the November meeting, and then move on to statewide bills subsequent from that. So with that, if there are no further questions, we can begin with the legislative bond initiatives. We have 2 that are new, that were not heard in the previous November meeting. The first of which is Howard County 28-21. I believe we have 1 person signed up to testify on that one, and that's Jennifer Bevan-Dangle. Ms. Bevan-Dangle, are you there?
Yes, thank you,
Great.
Senator. And thank you, members of the Howard County delegation. I do want to stress I am here. My name is Jennifer Bevan-Dangle. I'm here partly because I'm the state director for the Humane Society of the United States, but I also want to stress some of this testimony is personal. I'm a resident here in Lisbon, which is 9A, and a lifelong horse owner who's also, worked at several horse farms. So I'm very excited for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Bond 2821. And I have 2 of my youngest Days End supporters here with me. They wanted to make sure they showed their support. Days End Horse Farm is a unique treasure that all of Maryland should be proud of, beyond just the boundaries of Howard County. Days End has filled a crucial need. There did not used to be a place that could take in horses that were seized or neglected or in need of rehoming. And Days End really created a process and filled a void that now serves not just Howard County and the surrounding areas, but in fact, the entire state. Days End came up this morning on a call with Talbot Humane Association, who said, how grateful they are that they're able to work with Days End when they have large horses, large horse cases that are turned over to them. So unlike a county shelter, which serves the surrounding jurisdiction, Days End really does serve this entire state and has been able to take in and rescue horses from cases across the region. Everything about horse rescue is more complicated. It's more expensive. It's more difficult. And Days End has been a leader in sort of setting high standards and being one of the most preeminent groups, making sure that these horses have a second chance. On a personal note, I've worked at many different horse facilities, and I have rarely seen one that is as well run, as efficient, as impressive as this horse rescue. So they do a lot with very little. To the specific bond request that is before you for the renovation of the firehouse, the education and training that Days End provides is critical. The cost of seizing and caring for horses, of keeping them until they're able to be adopted, is astronomical. By being able to provide better training to animal control officers, to law enforcement, and to the community, Days End serves an important role through this education work of making sure that fewer horses need to be turned over and put into their care. And as they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And with a rescue situation the size of what they run, that's doubly true. A lot of the work the Humane Society of the United States does is making sure that our animal control officers, that our emergency personnel are able to respond appropriately to animal cases. Days End is one of the only groups in the state that gives specialized training to these personnel in how to handle equine situations. This is very different than an animal control officer walking into a yard and grabbing a couple 100-pound dogs. We're talking 1,000-pound flight animals. Providing that training really does decrease the risk of injury, both to the animals, but also to our personnel. So this is in many ways life-saving work that Days End provides. I've been around a panicked horse, and it is not something that you can just walk into if you've never done this before.
Oh,
and
yeah,
we
I'm
see
sorry,
horses.
your time has expired.
Oh, thank you. We see this happen across the state again. So we do urge a favorable vote on this bond request.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Dana Scanlon, also on this LBI. Ms. Scanlon, are you there? I see that you're there. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I can unmute. For some reason, the video has been stopped, but so I don't know if they want to start the video, or I can just go. Okay, let me try again.
There you go. I think I clicked you to start your video. There you go.
All right.
All right.
Hi.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of Days End Farm Horse Rescue, whose board of directors I serve on, thank you for inviting me today to speak in support of our request for the LBI. And my hope today is to give you an overview. DEFR is a 31-year-old nonprofit whose mission is to ensure quality care and treatment of horses through intervention, education, and outreach. And for that, we are recognized as a national model. The horses in our care come from local and regional animal control, law enforcement, and equine welfare agencies. We have rescued over 2,600 horses, and on average, 70% of those come from the state of Maryland. For over 30 years, we have done the work of the state. We are called upon by state or local authorities to remove neglected, starving horses. We care for them, we rehabilitate them, and we have trained forensic staff who document each horse's condition in detail, in gruesome detail sometimes, and every aspect of their care and veterinary treatment. Then our staff is called upon to testify when prosecutors bring charges against the perpetrators of this neglect and abuse. We do not receive any funding or payment for the service. We have a significant community impact through volunteer and educational work. In the past 3 years alone, hundreds of frontline responders have been reached through our education and training programs. Law enforcement, state's attorneys, animal control and welfare groups, and even veterinarians. We have provided this education over the years at virtually no cost to the participants and with no public funds. In the past 3 months alone, we have taken in 36 horses from Carroll County and St. Mary's County, suffering from extreme neglect and starvation, and some documentation on that has been provided in your packets. Criminal charges are pending in these cases, and we believe this is just the tip of the COVID era iceberg. The purchase and reimagining of the Lisbon Firehouse with the help of the LBI will allow DEFR to expand our outreach and education. We are able to match every dollar provided by the LBI through our deep connections to thousands of donors. We will be hiring local contractors to reconfigure and repair the firehouse. We anticipate creating 1 or 2 new full-time staff positions at the facility. We will make abundant use of local caterers, et cetera, for our education programs. And the new classroom space will be open to other community groups for their events. 94% of the horses we have rescued have survived their neglect and injuries to be rehabilitated. And 96% of those have gone on to be trained and then adopted into loving forever homes. With your help, we can and we will do more to carry out this vital mission. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. I think Senator Hester had a comment. A question. Go ahead.
Oops. Can you hear me? Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that when Days End approached me about putting in this, LBI on behalf of the delegation, I was really, really excited. It's kind of a unique opportunity for them because the Lisbon Firehouse, which is right next door, is being sold at a fire sale price, pun intended. And they're going to repurpose it for education, and the outbuilding will be used for the medical rehabilitation of horses. And I just want to underscore that this really truly is for the benefit of the entire state. And actually, we're one of the few states that actually has something like this. So we're actually unique in that way too. And it's also one of the few bond initiatives in the western part of the county. So I just want to thank Ms. Scanlon and the other lady who talked just for being here tonight. And really hope that everything goes well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Hester. I think that concludes the testimony for this legislative bond initiative, Howard County 28-21. The next one on the agenda is 29-21. There is no one signed up for this one. This is $75,000 bond initiative for the Community Ecology Center. So we will continue on the agenda. So we're moving now to statewide issues. These are statewide bills, and folks can testify on that. We have the first person signed up is Janet Edelman, followed by Randy Mariner, and then Pat Hersey, in that order. So if we can have Ms. Edelman come forward first and provide her testimony. I see her there. Good to see you.
I'm here. I'm
great.
here.
We have 3 minutes. You can go ahead and begin.
Thank you. My name is Janet Edelman. For years, I was an advocate for people living with a mental illness in my past leadership roles with NAMI Howard County and NAMI Maryland. I also served on the NAMI National Board for 6 years. I'm currently chairperson of the Howard County Local Behavioral Health Advisory Board. I'm here as an individual presenting my own views. I'm here to talk about HB 1344, SB 928, which addresses the danger standard for emergency evaluation and involuntary admission of individuals with a mental disorder. I'm asking Delegate Pendergrass and Atterbury to request that House Bill 1344 be sent from the Rules Committee to the HGO Committee. And I ask that Senator Gazzoni request that Senate Bill 928 be sent to the Senate Finance Committee from the Senate Rules Committee. My brother's been ill with schizophrenia for over 50 years. While he's quite ill, and was so for many years, he understands he's sick and accepts treatment. As an advocate, it quickly became clear to me years ago that some people with a severe mental illness were not as fortunate as my brother, because they did not understand that they were ill, were delusional or paranoid, and so they could not accept treatment. The danger standard was addressed by the recent report of the Commission to Study Mental and Behavioral Health in Maryland, which said, I quote, "It is crucial for the state to develop a clear and unambiguous standard for determining when individuals in crisis pose a danger to themselves or others. The current law leaves the definition of danger to the discretion of first responders, ER doctors, and others who may not have the training to understand how the law can be interpreted, resulting in lengthy hospitalization or incarceration or homelessness at a later date. Other states have addressed this issue more successfully. Maryland is one of only 5 states without explicit statutory language recognizing the inability to meet one's basic survival needs as a form of danger to self. While I was not involved in writing this bill, I do know the lawyer who wrote it. He's a national expert on commitment law. I believe that the bill he wrote is the best practice for this type of legislation. I hope that Delegates Pendergrass, Atterbury, and Senator Gazzoni can help to move this bill out of the Rules Committee in order to get it to the hearing, get it the hearings and the attention it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edelman. Next, we have Mr. Randy Mariner, followed by Pat Hersey and Melina Jareth. Mr. Mariner.
Good evening, Randy Mariner. I reside at Manor Hill Farm, 4411 Manor Lane in Ellicott City. It's so nice to be with you all tonight. I'll be testifying on 3 bills. I'll try to be very brief. First, Senate Bill 0821, which is alcoholic beverages, manufacturers license, and off-sale permits. As chairman and founder of Manor Hill Farm, we own and operate Manor Hill Brewing, Howard County's only Class 8 farm brewery. Under the governor's executive order, we have been safely selling our beer throughout curbside pickup, direct takeout, or delivery. To date, we have had absolutely no issues resulting from these sales. These additional consumer benefits we can now provide our customers is not only helping them, but also providing us much needed additional revenue. As such, I wholly support this bill and I ask for your support. Moving on, we'll go to HB 0012, alcoholic beverages, sale or delivery on-premise consumption. This is Delegate Watson's bill. As chairman and founder of Victoria Restaurant Group, we own and operate Victoria Gastropub in Columbia and Manor Hill Tavern in historic Ellicott City. Under the governor's executive order, we have safely been selling beer, wine, and liquor in mixed drinks to go for off-premise use. To date, we have had absolutely no issues resulting from these sales. These additional consumer benefits we can now provide our customers, not only helping them, but obviously helping us too. The restaurant industry, as we knew it pre-COVID, is probably gone forever. So consumers like the convenience of this carry-out food coupled with the ability to get their favorite beer, wine, or cocktail. As such, I wholly support this bill as well. Quickly moving on to House Bill 0581, which is the Maryland Essential Workers Protection Act. And this one's pretty troubling to me. I think that it was probably well-intentioned, but it's bad legislation that will crush small businesses like mine. Our restaurant and brewery are considered essential. During any emergencies, our revenues are always dramatically reduced and impacted by those emergencies. Adding additional $3 an hour per employee, plus the other added expenses that go along with that, could be devastating. As such, I wholly oppose this bill. And I appreciate your consideration and thanks for listening.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mariner. And I'll pass along to my co-chair, Doug Feldmark.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Pat Hersey, followed by Melina Jareth and Andrea Winter. So is Pat Hersey here? There she is.
Yes. Good evening, state delegation. So good to see you all. My name is Pat Hersey, 9462 Farewell Road in Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of several bills that focus on plastic reduction legislation. So they say that no intelligent species would destroy their own environment. But here we are, the most intellectual creature to ever walk Earth is destroying its own home. A new research paper calculates that across the life cycle, plastic accounts for 3.8% global greenhouse gas emissions. That is almost double the emissions from aviation sector. If plastic was a country, it would be the 5th highest emitter in the world. As founder of Less Plastic Please, I am fighting at the local, state, and federal level, since quite frankly, these facts scare the life out of me. Luckily, plastic legislation this session covers a multi-pronged approach needed to fight this crisis. Regulations such as bag bans, single-use plastic reduction, and beverage deposit bills have a long history of effectiveness. And thanks to you, I am proud to say that I can give firsthand testimony to this fact. That before the Howard County bag bill, disposable bag use was an embarrassing 76.6%. Just 2 months after our our bill went into effect, the follow-up survey completed with the Sierra Club showed the disposable bag use dropped to 41.8%. Regulations work, but we can't stop there. For the last 50 plus years, Big Oil has not been responsible for their products' end of life. We, the taxpayers, have been cleaning up the endless stream of cheap plastic that will continue to flow into our environment. Why? It is good for the industry's bottom line. There must be extended producer responsibility policies put in place to incentivize these companies to come up with better packaging design. Otherwise, nothing will change. And finally, and most concerning, is the future of plastic. Instead of working on sustainable upstream solutions, the corporate cronies want to go backwards, turning plastic into fuel, which would not only exacerbate the plastic crisis, but it would put fuel on the fire to the climate crisis. Of all the scary facts out there, chemical recycling is the one that keeps me up at night. So I strongly urge a favorable report on HB 21, prohibition on the chemical conversion of plastic, HB 69, single-use plastic restrictions, HB 99, beverage container deposit program, HB 314, SB 322, the Plastic Bag Reduction Act, HB 36, packaging container paper products, producer responsibility, with the amendment to remove the bottles, because bottles should stand alone for the beverage container deposit program. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Melina Jareth, who will be followed by Andrea Winter, followed by Laurie Lilly. Is Melina here? All right, we're gonna move on then to Andrea Winter, who will be followed by Laurie Lilly and then Kelly Proctor.
I know Nalini was going to call in on the phone because she was having internet trouble. I don't know if that.
Oh, I do see one call in.
Can you hear me,
there?
please?
Okay,
yes,
sorry
I am.
about that.
I'm
yes,
sorry.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Apologies for calling in. My internet crashed and burned. Dear members of the delegation, my name is Melina Jareth, and I speak today as a professor and a nurse of 40 years who has witnessed the effects of violence on our patients and whose colleagues have been treated violently by the patients we serve. I also speak as a person of color, an immigrant, and the mother of 2 young men who must be mindful of their actions when encountering police because of their skin color and perceived origins. Lastly, I speak as a citizen of Howard County who respects and values our police. The points I raise are hopefully not new, but rather underscore what is important to a member of the public who daily sees systemic bias in our nation. First, it is pointless to deny that structural racism exists in policing and throughout society. Racism is learned behavior arising from factors deep within all of us. Our critical challenge as a community is to understand, respond, and change our organizations, including our police. In poor and in minority communities, there are perceptions of 2 standards of justice. One for citizens who fit a certain image of a normal American, and a different one for those who are seen as others, or not really one of us. Furthermore, race combined with poverty poses double jeopardy. I volunteer as a nurse at a facility providing care to the underserved. Though the client's stories are private, their experience with the police is a far cry from my own, and not because of poor behavior on their part. Structural racism reflects both the imposition of unfair boundaries and the undermining of our understanding of how we should treat each other. It is dehumanizing, painful, and unjust. Unless we have police reform, specifically elimination of the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, police and civilian leadership are powerless to cause rapid and effective change. The balance of power is tilted against data-informed policy decisions and against good police who are hamstrung in their ability to serve their communities fairly and ethically. In terms of other gun sense measures, I'm also prompted by personal experience. A few years ago, I was threatened after I failed a student. The individual who made the threats was never found. I had to have a special parking spot be checked on and escorted by campus police as needed. The possibility of being watched by someone who might have a gun was terrifying. That is why I support legislation to ban ghost guns, do-it-yourself guns that anyone can build using parts and kits they can obtain without a background check. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And next we have Andrea Winter, who will be followed by Laurie Lilly and then Kelly Proctor.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the county delegation. My name is Andrea Winter, and I'm the volunteer legislative lead for Howard County Moms Demand Action, of which Nalini is also a member. I just want to make sure that's known. Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America advocates for a nonpartisan, evidence-based, common sense approach to gun violence prevention. We believe that there's a lot more that we can do to end gun violence without violating Second Amendment rights. Since our local group's founding 7 years ago, hundreds of your constituents have joined us as active supporters. I'm speaking tonight on their behalf to share our legislative priorities for the 2021 session, priorities that include regulating ghost guns and police reform. First, though, I want to thank you for the vote to override the governor's veto of the bill to require background checks on private sales of rifles and shotguns. We are grateful that this loophole in Maryland's gun safety laws has finally been closed. Since the override has been accomplished, a top Moms Demand Action priority is HB 638, Senate Bill 624. Currently in Maryland, illegal gun traffickers, violent domestic abusers, convicted felons, and others who could not pass a background check can legally purchase unfinished frames and receivers and other parts and kits that can easily be turned into guns with no questions asked. Anyone can obtain the building blocks of a firearm online without a background check and without any special equipment or expertise can create what's known as a ghost gun. These weapons have no serial numbers, making them impossible to trace when used in crimes. These untraceable, and in the case of all plastic 3D printed guns, undetectable firearms threaten public safety, thwart police investigations, and allow criminals to end run around our gun laws. Ghost guns are an exponentially growing problem. In Maryland, the ATF reported the recovery of 117 ghost guns in 2019, and by 2020, Baltimore City Police recovered more than 3 times as many ghost guns by December 1st as it had in all of 2019. By requiring mechanisms to trace and detect guns, you can provide for a safer Maryland. Our other priority this year is police reform. We stand with the coalition of community groups led by the Maryland ACLU in urging you to act forcefully, supporting measures that promote structural reform and substantive change, in particular for our Black and Brown communities, which are simultaneously underserved and over-targeted by law enforcement. We hope to see legislation that repeals the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, limits police use of force, increases law enforcement accountability, and provides for transparency and public access to information regarding police abuse of power. We ask for your support and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Laurie Lilly, who will be followed by Kelly Proctor, followed by Brian Gaylor.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Laurie Lilly. I live in Sykesville, Maryland. I am the executive director of Howard EcoWorks, a nonprofit that educates the community about environmental sustainability while creating pathways to green jobs through workforce development programs. You may be aware that President Biden has announced his intention to establish a civilian climate corps initiative that aims to put people to work in well-paying conservation jobs. We've been advocating for a similar initiative since the onset of COVID. In 2020, momentum has also grown in the Chesapeake Bay region. The Chesapeake Bay program is a regional partnership that has been directing the restoration of the Bay since 1983 and plays a critical role in the management of the Bay-wide TMDL for nutrients and sediment. The Chesapeake Bay program has 3 committees that report to the Executive Council that is composed of the governors of the Bay states. One of these is the Local Government Advisory Committee that advises on how to effectively implement projects and engage the support of local governments to achieve the goals of the Bay Agreement. In 2020, LGAC advised the Executive Council to, quote, replicate and expand on workforce development programs modeled on the Civilian Conservation Corps. They further stated that, quote, watershed communities are facing extraordinary challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, one of which is loss of jobs and income. Simultaneously, watershed restoration efforts have slowed. LGAC calls on the Chesapeake Executive Council to replicate and expand on these workforce development programs as a means to minimize unemployment and continue watershed restoration efforts. This 2020 advisement follows similar pre-pandemic advisement from 2018, in which LGAC advised the council that workforce programs should be used to help address local government staffing gaps by training targeted groups, including offenders, veterans, and other disadvantaged populations. Here locally in Howard County, both EcoWorks and Howard County government model to the rest of the Chesapeake Bay for how we can address complex social and environmental problems. This is exemplified in one, our rehabilitation work at the Corrections Department, where we operate an on-site native plant nursery that engages the inmates in outdoor work and education. And two, in Ellicott City, where we have been using our workforce to manage debris in the stream channels since 2015. We are clearly showing our region the impact that green jobs can have on a local community, as well as how these programs can supplement and complement the activities and efforts of local government. Ask that the Howard County delegation consider providing support for expansion of our successful efforts here in Howard County. We would like to see funds that are distributed or administered through Biden's Climate Corps come to our suburban and rural areas, in addition to cities and public lands, and would like those funds to support local government and community efforts to meet Bay restoration goals through green jobs programs. Lastly, there is an emerging opportunity with biochar, a soil amendment that sequesters carbon in the soil, addresses waste streams such as excessive manure or waste products, and has been shown in research plots in Ellicott City to improve infiltration by more than 95%. We can look at innovations like biochar as further opportunities to simultaneously address climate change, stormwater runoff, and economic development.
Lily?
Thank you. I'm done.
Oh, thank you. Great.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kelly Proctor, who will be followed by Brian Gaylor and then by Brad Blackwell.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Kelly Proctor. I grew up in Maryland and currently reside in Howard County, where I serve on the local Behavioral Health Advisory Board. Today, I'm testifying as an individual on behalf of Senate Bill 928 and House Bill 1344. 5 years ago, my then 20-year-old son was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, acute psychosis, and schizoaffective disorder. During his 1.5-year psychosis, our family went from being afraid for our son to being afraid of him. Calling for assistance turned out to be very stressful because my husband and I were constantly asked if our son had assaulted us. I am outraged that being attacked by my son is the standard that Maryland has set to provide my son assistance. It became clear that Maryland laws are reactive and not proactive in helping families in a mental health crisis. Currently, Maryland law does not consider property destruction from a violent outburst as a sign of psychiatric deterioration and does not seem to understand that psychosis does not go away on its own. Our family was often in danger, sleeping in shifts, and carrying pepper spray. My husband and I were scared of the consequences of filing for an emergency petition while living with someone so unstable. Today, my husband and I remain hypervigilant in our son's interactions, always looking for signs if he is a danger to himself or others. To date, as a caregiver, it is my job to identify and manage the severity of the psychotic episode, since the current laws do not provide support or help. Although a mental illness diagnosis in a family is challenging, it should not be a sentence for a lifetime of fear. I am confident that Maryland updating the current law defining harm to self or others in Senate Bill 928 and House Bill 1344 will create a proactive step in aiding those in a mental health crisis. Maryland needs to recognize that property destruction is one of the signs of imminent danger in a psychotic episode. This law allows providers of care to file for emergency petition before a tragedy occurs. Families like mine should not have to continue to live with trauma and constant fear, waiting for harm to occur before evaluation and treatment are available. I hope that I can count on your support to consider this important legislation, give it a hearing, and ultimately pass Senate Bill 928 and House Bill 1344. Thank you all. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to listen to my story and my requests.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brian Gaylor, followed by Brad Blackwell, and then Emma Bush.
Hi, I'm Brian Gaylor. I'm the founder of Black Flag Brewing Company in Columbia, Maryland, and I live in Ellicott City. I'm calling in today to speak in support of House Bill 1232 and Senate Bill 821. Basically, this is a group of changes that kind of incorporate things that were temporarily given to the craft beverage and alcohol beverage industry during COVID. Things such as direct-to-consumer shipping and statewide door-to-door delivery by our employees, and kind of lifting caps on what we're allowed to sell and how we're allowed to sell it. It's basically codifying a handful of small changes that really made it easier for us to keep our business going. And given that it's going to be hard to say how long it's going to take for the consumer mindset to return to how it was, it would be very helpful to our industry to put some of these things into law. And it goes a little bit further to simplify some of the fees and licensing that's in place. Kind of simplifies the permitting process as well. Right now, if Budweiser were to open a brewery in Columbia down the street from me, they would be paying the same amount of fees as I am. So just right now, how the laws are written, the fees are set. If you're a brewery, you're paying this fee. And just introducing flexibility would be helpful in times where the economy is tough, and to also kind of level the playing field depending on your output. I would, again, just like to speak favorably for House Bill 1232 and Senate Bill 821.
Thank you. Next up, we have Brad Blackwell, who will be followed by Emma Bush, followed by Marianne Eischenberger. Is Brad Blackwell here? All right, we'll move on to Emma Bush.
Hi. Okay, hi. I've only got 3 minutes, so I'll be talking fast, but my goal here today, first and foremost, is to encourage you to think twice about our plastic problem. My name's Emma Bush, 90808 Woodbridge Court, and I'm a 16-year-old climate activist at Sunrise Movement, Howard County. I've grown up with the knowledge that my future is threatened by climate change, and I, like many other kids in my generation, have decided that it's time for our leaders to protect the people and the environment. HB 21 and HB 36 have to do with our plastic pollution problem. A study that drew from 52 peer-reviewed studies found that plastic pollution is so widespread that we're consuming about a credit card worth of plastic every single week. This statistic is scary, but not surprising, considering a third of plastic is leaked into our environment. In the last 2 decades, we've produced as much plastic as we have during the preceding years combined. All of this to say, this issue and activists like me are here to stay until leaders like you speak up and pass legislation to change this. We know the fossil fuel industry pushes the burden of their destructive plastic production onto the consumer with campaigns like "Don't be a litter bug" and that plastic recycling is possible when we've only recycled 9% of it. So, what's their next move as we move away from fossil fuel energy and leave them with all that extra oil? Well, they're pouring $400 billion into raw plastic production. Now, why would the fossil fuel industry invest in a transition to plastic production and supposedly push for plastic to be recycled in a circular economy? They wouldn't. Their newest trend that they call chemical recycling, you may have seen the commercial for it during the Super Bowl with the catchphrase, "Bring back the bottle." It doesn't work, just like traditional plastic recycling doesn't work. No chemical recycling technology offers a true no-waste recycling process, and often what they call recycling is just making plastic into toxic fuels. In the words of a 2020 study on chemical recycling that wasn't funded by the plastic industry, chemical recycling is not at present and is unlikely to be in the next 10 years an effective form of plastic waste management, and rather represents a dangerous distraction for a society that must transition to a sustainable future. When you Google chemical recycling, though, the first site you'll find is one supporting its efficacy. And who funds the site? The Plastics Industry Association. They will continue to fight hard for this, and we need to fight back. The technology just isn't there. It's not efficient, clean, or scalable, and we don't have the time to wait for it to catch up to the rapidly growing plastic industry, we've got too much to lose. So Bill HB 21 prohibits plastic to fuel facilities in Maryland, which makes sense as we're moving away from fossil fuels, and that includes plastic. So let's close the door on the fossil fuel industry before they make their next move. So if plastic recycling doesn't work, what's the solution? Extended producer responsibility, better known as EPR. Bill HB 36 states that every producer should submit a plan for how their product will be processed after use. We need waste reduction and upstream solutions. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope to see your support on this issue.
Thank you. Next up, we have Marianne Eischenberger, who will be followed by Beth Hoffman, and then followed by Ruth Alice White.
Hi, my name is Marianne Eischenberger, and I'm an advanced practice mental health nurse of 39 years living in District 12 in Howard County. I'm urging you to support the Senate Bill 928 and the House Bill 1344, which would improve mental health practitioners' ability to provide more timely treatment. A more robust definition of danger to include those severely mentally ill that are unable to meet their basic needs is needed. Evidence shows that those severely mentally ill who do not receive treatment in earlier stages of their illness or have had multiple hospitalizations have had a poor response to future treatment and poorer long-term outcomes. Another negative consequence is that these individuals often come to the mental health system through the prison system. I've worked with a client that was homeless, hearing voices that told them that others around them were the devil and they need to be stopped. The client entered the system after a criminal activity, and he threatened a retail cashier. The client was then entered through the forensic system rather than through the civil system. And he did receive treatment. And even though the client did not believe that he had an illness at the time, he did state after treatment that that actually saved his life. He described the horror of living on the streets, searching for food in garbage cans, and not understanding that the voices were not real. This was a lucky situation and a good one, but that's too often not the case. Involuntary hospitalization requires at least 2 health providers to make the determination in writing that a client requires this level of care. Please realize that as care providers, we do not make the decision to involuntary treatment lightly, and that specific criteria are and must be followed by the law. Maryland is among 5 states with the most restrictive standards for involuntary hospitalization in the nation. This bill would change that, and this bill won't increase costs as earlier treatment will use less forensic system resources and less hospital resources. I ask all the legislators to support this bill. I further ask Delegates Pendergrass and Atterbury to request that this House bill be sent from the Rules Committee to the HGO Committee. I ask Delegate Pendergrass to commit to scheduling a hearing on the bill when it arrives at the HGO Committee. I asked Senator Guzon to request that the Senate Bill 928 be sent to the Senate Finance Committee for the Senate Rules Committee, from the Senate Rules Committee, excuse me. This is the first time I've ever done this in 40 years. And I have worked in a state in which we had the alternative definition of dangerousness. It was effective. And I really feel that it's critical to the individuals that I've been working with for 39 years. So I thank and appreciate you for the time that you've spent with me, and I really urge and hope that you will support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Beth Hoffman, followed by Ruth Alice White, followed by Josie Smith. You're on mute, Ms. Hoffman.
Thank you. Just getting too excited. First time speaking to the entire delegation. So I am Beth Hoffman, representing the League of Women Voters of Howard County, 5430 Vantage Point Road in Columbia. First of all, I want to thank you. You've been working so hard. The COVID relief bill, yay! And I know the police accountability and now the vaccine. So I appreciate your taking a look at something that's a little more abstract and won't probably be really coming a crisis until the end of the summer, but it will come. So it's best to be prepared. There are 3 bills that I'd like to speak to. House Bill 655, Local Government County Commissioner Elections District Voting. House Bill 399, Legislative District Standards. And House Bill, I need to correct, it used to be 410. There's been a change. It's now 1260 instead of 410. Congressional District Standards is anti-gerrymandering. I won't read it to you. I know you've all been working hard and you read these papers, but I would like to explain why these 3 bills are put together. And one is the House Bill 655 is coming out of St. Mary's, Delegate Crosby. House Bill 399 and 1260 are coming out of Anne Arundel from Delegate Malone. What they have in common is they are attempting to protect the minority citizens from the majority. That's what they have in common. And that's why, as the lead redistricting for the state league, I've been asked to work on these both. The one for the HB 655 and the other 2 are correcting weaknesses, if you would, or improving the way that the law has been set since 1851. This is 170 years. This has been going on, and it's unfair. And we're looking at both sides. We're a nonpartisan organization looking at both sides. And the first one is about at-large voting. So what happens is all the district commissioners and St. Mary's, Calvert, Washington, and 3 others are voted at large. And then what happens is you end up with district commissioners that are in charge of a district, but they did not get a plurality of votes in that district. And this is not fair. This is not right. Dorchester went to the courts in the 90s and the 80s and got it fixed, but there were still 5 counties that did not. So I would like to ask Delegate Ebersol and Deborah Terrassa to move this out of the Ways and Means Committee. Senators, I'm so sorry I didn't have anything to ask you tonight. I'm sure it'll come up soon. And for the standards for legislative districts and standards for congressional districts, right now Maryland doesn't have any standards for congressional districts. They rely on the federal standards. So essentially there is no law. And this is something that needs to be corrected. So this particular sets are to improve the legislative standards. There are standards for the legislative district drawing, and the timing for this is going to be later. I know this is not
pardon me,
right now.
Your time has expired.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from Ruth Alice White, followed by Josie Smith, followed by Daphne DeMarekler.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Ruth Alice White, and I live in District 13 in Columbia, speaking for Howard County Climate Action, a local chapter of the International 350.org organization, representing more than 1,450 subscribers. And our group is a member of the Howard County Climate Collaboration. We've been working for years to educate and address the climate crisis with people in Howard County. And as you all know, in 2020, no substantial climate legislation passed. The legislature ended early because of COVID. But now, even though there are many other important bills that we support, COVID relief, police reform, and many other bills, we want you to put some of the major climate bills in priority. We know that most of you tell us you'll vote for them if they come up on the floor. But the 2 major bills I'm going to speak about, we would like you to let leadership know that these are important bills, and also to urge your other colleagues to support them. In addition, if you're on Economic Matters, one of the 2 environmental committees, or Senate Budget and Taxation, you can advocate and vote for these in committee. The 2 major bills for many climate groups and coalitions in Maryland are Climate Solutions Now, which sets stretch goals for Maryland greenhouse gas reductions, 60% by 2030 and zero emissions by 2045, provisions for energy efficient buildings, transportation, and much more. And the bill numbers are in the testimony I filed with you. And the Transit Safety and Investment Act, a very minimal bill, which will just keep public transit safe and operating. In the future, we need the expansion of current systems, but right now we desperately need to have what we already have to keep it going. Many of our essential workers during COVID rely on public transit, and it's a benefit to all of us. In addition, there are other great climate bills. One that's passing the Senate right now and passed the Senate last year is the consideration of climate and labor, which we hope will move quickly through the House also. It requires the Public Service Commission to consider climate in approving new power plants. This is common sense. Maryland has climate goals and the PSC should be involved also in reaching them. So we hope that that will see a swift passage through the House. There are a couple of bills on expanding geothermal, which is a type of energy we haven't really pushed much in Maryland, but is having great advances in New York and Connecticut. It's an opportunity if we figure out how to provide incentives and education for people.
Your time has expired.
My time is expired. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Josie Smith, who will be followed by Daphne DeMarekler, followed by Catherine Albert.
Hi, my name is Josie Smith. I'm a freshman at River Hill High School and a part of Sunrise Howard County. I'm a climate and youth activist, and like many others in my generation, we've recognized the impact climate change has imposed on us, and this is our demand for change. 3 bills that I found would help my community were HB 0332, SB 0483, and HB 0280. These bills are Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, the Renewable Energy, Organic Recycling and Waste Diversion, and lastly, the Climate Solutions Now bill. Did you know that in the state of Maryland, incineration is considered a Tier 1 renewable energy source on par with solar power and wind power? It receives clean energy subsidies even though it isn't even clean. Air pollutants from waste incinerators increase the risk of preterm births, cancer of the blood and lung, and emergency room visits. To produce the same amount of energy, these incinerators emit higher levels of mercury, lead, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide than coal plants. One of these huge plants is Baltimore's Bresco. Particulate matter emitted from this plant causes $55 million in adverse health effects annually. The first bill, HB 0332, removes incineration status as a Tier 1 renewable energy source. The second bill is HB 0280, Organic Recycling and Waste Diversion. It's an essential food waste bill that will require entities producing over 2 tons of food waste per week to divert food waste from our landfills by sending it to composting facilities, reducing their food waste, donating servable food, or using it for agricultural purposes. According to Paul Hawkins' drawdown study that explored 100 solutions to the climate change or reduce CO2 emissions, reduction of food waste is the 3rd most impactful solution. Finally, my last bill that will put us on the path to our green future is HB 0280, better known as Climate Solutions Now. It sets goals for carbon emissions while making clear that we must protect the communities that will be most impacted by the shift in our economy as we transition. The bill works to tackle climate change and climate justice, and as our climate experts continue to tell us, we cannot afford to wait any longer than we have. We demand justice now. Will you, as delegates, be climate leaders and help shepherd the bill out of the committee and onto the floor? We're asking for your help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Daphne DeMarekler, followed by Catherine Albert, followed by Liz Fainer.
Good evening. My name is Daphne DeMarekler. By the way, Jessica Feldmark, you said my name perfectly, so thank you. I'm 16-year-old junior at River Hill High School and a constituent in District 13. Today, I will be testifying in support of HB 768, HB 36, and SB 0414, cross-filed as HB 0583. I am a hub coordinator of Sunrise Movement Howard County. We are a local youth-led environmental justice organization. We are high school and college students who've grown up with the worsening effects of climate change and witnessed the disappointing lack of urgency from our government leaders. HB 768 puts power back into our community by establishing energy democracy. Community choice energy shifts us to renewable energy as our default energy source rather than dirty non-renewables. This is how we drive out fossil fuels from our community and shift to a cleaner, better future. HB 36, extended producer responsibility, completely changes the way we address the climate crisis. Companies are the top polluters, but they are never held accountable. HB 36 forces companies that produce plastic, paper, and packaging to submit plans for the management of their products after use. They cannot keep making taxpayers and local governments foot the entire bill for waste management and recycling with no current incentive to change, especially when virgin material is cheap. We need to stop relying on downstream solutions, and we need to move upstream to the producers. Last, HB 0414, cross-filed as HB 0583, Climate Solutions Now, commits us to a 60% reduction in carbon emissions below 2006 levels by 2030 and to reaching net zero emissions by 2045. Most importantly, it works from the bottom up, making sure we put power into the people from labor unions and marginalized communities. We need you to act and support climate solutions now, not later, pun intended. Something important I need to address. I am both in this meeting with the Howard County delegation and at the Howard County Council's legislative public hearing. These Howard County meetings should not have been scheduled on the same day at the same time. It creates this ultimatum between county and state bills, which can be easily avoided. Last thing, I would like to comment on submitting state testimony. The window was between 10 and 3, now shifted to 8 and 3. This is an inappropriate time window for students like me and working class constituents. My school day is at the exact same time, and often I'm writing testimony during class. If this is to be a democratic process, please make testimony due in the evening. Last, there is no time to delay climate justice legislation. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us the consequences of a public health crisis, and the climate crisis is a public health crisis. So please support SB 0414, cross-filed as HB 0583, HB 768, and HB 0036. I am sending so much love to our Sunrisers and to Pat Hersey and all of the environmental activists speaking today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Catherine Albert, who will be followed by Liz Fainer, then Claire Monsoor.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Albert, and I am a member of the Mount Hebron High School PTSA Youth Mental Health Advocacy Team. Tonight, I ask you to please support Bill HB 461. This bill would give students the option to take up to 1 day per quarter during the school year as an excused absence to address their mental health needs. As a current junior in high school and someone who has experienced the effects of negative mental health, I know how important mental health is for students. This is a topic that affects everyone, yet the stigma surrounding it prevents students from seeking and receiving the help and support they need to thrive in school. Personally, much of my high school experience has been altered as a result of mental illness. Transitioning from middle to high school was not an easy task for me, and the stress of added schoolwork and responsibilities led to constant stress and anxiety. This later led to my formal diagnosis of anxiety and depression. Transitioning between schools with limited resources and support led to my use of self-harm and isolation as coping skills. I focused on my schoolwork more than my own health because I was afraid that if I took even a class period to talk to someone, I would fall behind in class. My inability to cope in a positive way led to my eventual hospitalization. I remember the first thing I felt after I was hospitalized was severe panic because I would be missing school and my important assignments. This made it difficult to focus on my treatment. However, I did make it through and I graduated from the program a week later. Even though I'm doing better now, I'm still dealing with the negative consequences of my mental struggles. Though I have learned how to effectively cope with my depression and anxiety, I'm still affected by it every day. Mental health is not something that I can choose not to think about because it does not affect me. I have to think about it every day. I am not cured and I never fully will be. Looking back, I can attest to the fact that being able to take days off from school would have helped me address my mental problems. Excused absences for mental health would have given me better access to needed support and provided relief during my worst days. I would have been able to take a step back and focus on something other than the constant pressure of keeping up with my academics. I wholeheartedly feel that the ability to have excused mental health days for students would not only lift some of the stigma around mental health in schools, but also provide a safe and stressless time for students to get the help and support we need. Mental health is a critical issue for everyone, and it affects all students, whether or not we address it. I believe that HB 461 is a valuable step in the right direction toward improving our students' mental health care. In conclusion, I hope that you will vote for a favorable report on HB 461 if you are a member of the committee that considers that bill, or vote to pass this bill when you have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Liz Fainer, followed by Claire Mansour, followed by Evelyn Burton.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thanks. I'm also on 2 calls, so trying to listen to both. I'm Liz Fainer, District 13, and I'm testifying for several climate, transportation, and zero waste bills. I'm the chair of the Green Team at Emmanuel United Methodist Church in Laurel and a member of the Howard County Climate Action, but I'm testifying as a concerned activist about the climate emergency facing all of us. The Maryland Transportation and Safety Investment Act and the Climate Solutions Now Act are high priority bills this year, and I encourage you to please vote for both, and I thank those who are co-sponsors. And I've listed the bills by number in my written testimony. The Maryland Public Service Commission recently approved energy projects that increase greenhouse gas emissions, not reduce them. The PSC expressly stated they do not have to consider climate at all, so please support the PSC Climate and Labor Test Bill to require consideration of the climate crisis when evaluating proposed projects. In order to meet our goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in Maryland, we need to have a truly renewable RPS. Incineration and black liquor need to be removed from the RPS as these dirty energy sources crowd out clean energy such as wind and solar. And geothermal should be included in the RPS as this technology is clean, highly efficient. The best and most cost-effective methods of deploying geothermal should also be studied. Encouraging residents to take personal action for reducing their carbon footprint is a goal of my volunteer organization. We have run several campaigns to encourage residents to switch their utility energy supplier to those that provide 100% wind for their household. Unfortunately, we've had only minimal success, so we need to leverage the purchasing power of aggregating everyone together at the county level as a tool. And passing the Community Choice Energy Bill will have a much greater impact in reducing climate damaging emissions. It creates a pilot for Montgomery County now, but it could pave the way for Howard County. And finally, plastic production is such a huge impact on climate. Please pass the single-use restrictions and the plastic bag reduction bills immediately. And responsibility for disposal of all this single-use plastic garbage should be extended to the plastic producers and not left to the taxpayers. So please support the producer responsibility bill. None of this plastic is recyclable, yet the producers want us to believe they have a solution while cranking out and ramping up single-use packaging. Their message is just as dangerous and deceiving as the fracking message was. So support the ban on the chemical conversion of plastic. And the only thing that really is easily recyclable is beverage containers. So support the beverage container deposit bill. Instead of bottles being returned for deposit, glass bottles in Howard County are being crushed and sent to Virginia as landfill cover toppings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Claire Mansour, followed by Evelyn Burton, followed by Laurie Scott.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Mansour. I'm a junior at Mount Hebron High School. I'm a part of the PTSA Youth Mental Health Advocacy Team, and I believe that passing this mental health bill would be incredibly beneficial to struggling students. As someone who suffers from clinical anxiety and ADHD, I cannot stress enough how often I wish I could just take a day to relax and recharge my brain after weeks of overloading it. High school is an incredibly stressful time for many people. The immense pressure to make life-altering decisions alone would be more than enough to burn out a young mind. But teens also need to balance unstable social lives and overwhelming workload, non-academic responsibilities, and more. Even for a neurotypically healthy teenager, high school is mentally taxing. For students suffering from mental illness, high school essentially forces them to tie both hands behind their backs and then expects them to keep up with everyone else. According to the Washington Post, a study from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention showed that the rate of suicide increased by 56% from 2007 to 2017 among people ages 10 to 24. Suicide in recent years has become the second most common cause of death among teens and young adults. It has overtaken homicides and it is outpaced only by accidents. You can see the rest of the article linked in my written testimony. Despite these statistics, in other states like Oregon, where students work to promote policies like HB 461, there was opposition to granting mental health days for students, arguing that students would abuse the system. First of all, kids have been faking illnesses to get out of school for millennia. Secondly, I have to ask those who may be opposed to this bill, is it fair to rob students who desperately need mental health days just because a few students might misuse them? Is it worth risking their health and safety just because some students might spend a day or two slacking off? There is definite stigma of exhibiting any signs of wavering mental health because it's often seen as weakness and has undoubtedly led to a dangerous lack of empathy. My school community is working hard to combat this stigma, encouraging students to ask staff and other trusted adults for help with mental health struggles when we need it. Our school's PTSA has been working hard with the school to do what we can to support our school and the students. Ana Nunez has submitted a written testimony on behalf of the adult members of our advocacy team and our entire PTSA community, who also support this bill, which I hope you will read. However, the public school system is struggling to accommodate and support these students with mental health problems they are experiencing. When a stomach ache is considered an acceptable reason to miss class, but a depressive episode or a panic attack is not, it seems like the school system is contradicting itself. If we are to provide a consistent message, we must collectively acknowledge mental health as any other sickness or injury. Our first step is to pass this bill and let students know their schools value their mental health just as much as their physical health. Thank you for listening to my testimony, and I hope you will support and pass HB 461.
Thank you. Next up, we have Evelyn Burton, followed by Lori Scott, followed by Joel Hurwitz.
Good evening. My name is Evelyn Burton. I am the Advocacy Chair for the Maryland chapter of Schizophrenia and Related Disorders Alliance of America, or SARDA. We are a nonprofit organization that advocates for those with serious mental illness and their families. I'm also a relative of a Howard County resident who lives with serious mental illness. The current law that we have that defines the danger standard for involuntary psychiatric evaluation and emergency hospital treatment denies treatment for desperately ill individuals, even when they are unable to satisfy their basic survival needs or prevent further psychiatric deterioration. We ask your support of HB 1344 and SB 928, which define the danger standard for involuntary psychiatric evaluation and hospital admission. The current standard results in suicides, including suicide by cop, violence, homelessness, less recovery, permanent brain damage, and is a major driver of criminalization of those with mental illness. The proposed bills would help by specifying the danger need not be imminent, personal and medical history may be taken into account. It would include a substantial risk that as a result of mental illness, the individual will be A, unable to provide their basic needs, or B, will suffer substantial deterioration of brain function and is unable to make an informed decision on treatment. We realize that 2021 is a stressful and difficult year for legislators, and maybe not the best year to ask for consideration of a bill with some controversy. However, especially for those with psychotic illnesses and their families, Every year has been a terrible year when a loved one is denied hospital treatment and commits suicide, or starves himself until he cannot speak, or becomes homeless because his family fears violence, or agonizes while watching psychosis get worse, knowing it is causing permanent brain damage and nothing can be done to help. COVID-19 has made things even worse. Those with psychosis are often unable to adhere to COVID-19 precautions. Recently released research shows that those with schizophrenia have the highest death rate from COVID-19 of all groups except those over 75. We request that the Howard County delegation, all of you, advocate for the release of these bills from the Rules Committee and assignment to the HGO and Finance Committee. Your constituents are dying from suicide and violence and suffering terribly from homelessness and criminalization and brain damage. And you are the only ones who can help. Our house is on fire and we need your help now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next up, we have Lori Scott, followed by Joel Hurwitz, followed by Nicole Dvorak.
Hi, can you hear me? It says the
Yes,
video.
sure can. Go ahead.
Video is not starting. All I got to say is good going students tonight. How amazing are those advocates? Thank you, delegation, for having me tonight. And I'm here to support House Bill 715 and Senate Bill 665, which would provide video surveillance cameras in self-contained classrooms in Maryland. I wanted you all to know that this bill is important to me. It originated right here in Howard County, the need for cameras in our self-contained classrooms. My daughter is a high schooler and attends an adaptive life skill classroom in her high school. And 2 years ago, an aide pushed a nonverbal autistic student into desks. When this happened, it was reported 2 days later. It took the administration 5 days to investigate, and then the parents were told and the aide was suspended. When she returned from suspension, she became my daughter's aide. So I had a meeting with the principal and the vice principal to ask them how this happened. And they said that the union came in to support her and she was returned to her job. Needless to say, a week or so later after that conversation, she was terminated. Videos can be a fact finder. Without cameras that can be viewed when these allegations are reported, it can take days and weeks and months to investigate exactly what happened. Cameras can be the eyes we need in there if a student is being mistreated. This footage can be used to convict someone who has harmed a child. This week in the Ways and Means Committee, our own state's attorney, Rich Gibson, came in and discussed a case where an aide had repeatedly hit a child on the head in the bus for squirming in his seat, a nonverbal autistic kid. Had the video in the bus not been available, they would not have been able to prosecute that aide. Cameras are on our cops, they're in our hallways and vestibules, they're on outside of school buildings and stairwells, in our buses, in stores to deter theft, and on our doorbells and many public places. Per my written testimony, only 1% of the students are educated in a self-contained classroom. They are not diploma bound, they are alternatively assessed. So a very small amount of the population is in this, and it is our most vulnerable and powerless school constituents. If this bill passes this year, we will be one of 4 states that has video surveillance option in our most vulnerable areas for our school constituents that are nonverbal and limitedly verbal, and they are educated predominantly in one area of our school building. My daughter has 3 to 4 classes in one area. Because these children cannot speak up for themselves or report abuse, video recordings in this classroom can assist in investigations or suspected harm and abuse. Cameras are our students' voice. Please support this bill for the sake of our vulnerable kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Joel Hurwitz, followed by Nicole Dvorak. I do not see Joel. Okay.
He's speaking at the.
I just got that message. So we're going to go ahead to Nicole Dvorak, and hopefully Joel will rejoin us in a moment.
Great, thank you. I'm happy to go ahead. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening this evening and listening to my testimony. Most of you are already pretty familiar with the bill that I'm testifying on. It's House Bill 16, which is Senate Bill 478, called Dignity, Not Detention. As you are already aware, Howard County is one of only 3 counties in Maryland, along with Frederick and Worcester, that have an agreement with ICE, in which the county is paid to detain immigrants. This bill was introduced in the last session, but like many other bills, it did not make it to second reading because of COVID. I do want to thank those in the delegation who co-sponsored this legislation last year, including delegates Terrassa, Ebersol, and Feldmark. Thank you. So what does this bill do? The main part that I'm most interested in, though both, is that it requires any public entity that currently has an existing immigration detention agreement like Howard's to terminate that agreement no later than October 1st of 2022. It would also require more transparency around the process if a private entity wants to construct a detention center. They would have to issue a public notice and solicit and receive public comment before they can get any permits. So why should anyone support this bill? I think that and hope that many of you already do support this bill, but I want to underscore that the county should not be profiting off of the human rights abuses that ICE continues to inflict, including, but of course, unfortunately not limited to, rampant racial profiling and gross medical neglect. Some say that the county needs the money from this contract, but again, this profit is made from and because of gross human rights violations. It's certainly nothing to be proud of. In fiscal year 2019, Howard County made about $2 million in profit from this contract. That was based on an average of having 86 detainees per day. As of November, at the end of November, the detention center had about 16 ICE detainees, which is about 1/5 of the 2019 population. Detention is not the answer here. I've heard from a lot of groups about that.
I would like, for the folks to get behind this.
Is there someone?
Delegate Watson, can you mute yourself, please?
And let's see, where was I? So detention is not the answer. To legitimately be closer to their families and their lawyers, those accused should actually be with their families and not thrown in a cell. The pandemic has made it even harder to reach them and help them. I want to also make it especially clear that Howard County's detention center is not safe for detainees. Firsthand accounts of ICE detainees at the detention center have described gross medical neglect, verbal abuse, and spoiled food at the hands of county staff. And I could go on. I do think that this contract is a financial liability for Howard County, considering that our own county staff is responsible for repeated and criminal inhumane abuse. And I'll end with that, according to the Journal of the American Medical Association, ICE detainees are at least 13 times more likely to contract COVID. That's even higher than those in detention who are not ICE detainees. So I hope that you support this legislation. There are a lot of people following it, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Dvorak was our last person signed up. We had a couple folks who were not here. Brad Blackwell, I do not see. And unfortunately, Joel Hurwitz is not back to us yet. So, just in time, Joel Hurwitz. He just popped in. All right. Joel, it is your lucky night. We were about to wrap. You made it just in time. Joel?
Hello.
There you are. Okay, go right ahead.
Yes. Yes, I was at the council hearing, had to turn things off on again. So as previous speakers mentioned, it's difficult with both at the same time. And for all the environmental people, the bill's next. sent you testimony earlier today dealing with the county board's discrimination prohibition for in education, SB 98, HB 155. About a year ago, when the school board started talking about parochial busing, I ended up writing a long memo I shared during the budget time with the council last year. Including that was the memo from the superintendent that I sent to you. What I realized is that nobody was really paying attention to the details of the bill that say that a school cannot be receiving both state aid and the parochial busing. And through my analysis, I determined that because Bethel Christian Academy had been kicked out of the programs and it's currently in litigation, that they ironically then became eligible for the parochial busing by the county because they were discriminating for the other programs. So I thought you should close that loophole and provide that a county board provided parochial busing should also be included. Also, HB 480 and related SB 315 dealing with plug-in electric vehicles. As I've testified in the past, I guess Delegate Senator Lamb rather has passed this off to his colleagues. Been talked to you in the past about how the definition is overly broad and actually is an impediment to encouraging electric trucks. Last July, the governor signed an MOU dealing with medium and high density electric vehicles, and included therein is a requirement to get rid of impediments dealing with weight limits, which is included the 8,500 pound, that's included in the state law and in the county legislation. I worked with then Councilwoman Teresa, and Councilperson Rigby is actually working on trying to amend that perhaps later this year, but it's going to be thwarted if the state legislation basically does what in Baltimore, Montgomery, and Annapolis, Howard, that basically is an impediment to high density electric vehicles and low speed electric vehicles as well. Delegate Lamb had in 2018 or something there too into the bill.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our testimony for this evening. I do want to thank everyone who came out and shared your time with us, as well as your insights and perspectives. Thank you for taking the time to testify, and thank you to everyone who may have been watching along. To the members of the delegation, we will see you all tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.